The X-Men, truly a team that is greater than the sum of its individual parts. The X-Men had a lot of meaning. First, the X-Men really is about group dynamics. It's about collective identity, and it's about this ideological function. So let's kind of crack into it a little bit. The X-Men really serve as a living organism, like the shared consciousness that's made up of these powerful, often very conflicted archetypes. We start with its roots, Professor X, who represents the superego. This guy is all moral restraint, he's reason, he's your ideal self. Whereas Magneto is the id. He's raw survival instinct, he's power, he's revenge. And the various teams become the ego, constantly being mediated between this restraint and this rage, this assimilation and this rebellion. They aren't just a team, this is a psychic anatomy of an oppressed group's collective vibe, like how they get off. Now, every member of the X-Men carries some very specific type of trauma, right? Discrimination, abandonment, mutilation, they've gone through war, all type of stuff. So together they create this trauma bonded community, unified not because of what they love, but because of what they've suffered. So psychologically, this is a very cohesive trauma identity. We're mutants and the world hates us. This unifying pain provides belonging for all of them, but also breeds this dependence and this internal hierarchy. Xavier's morality, Cyclops' control, Wolverine's rebellion, all represent different lanes for these mutants to come together in. Now, the X-Men mirror marginalized communities that seek empowerment, but wrestle with leadership, purity tests, like ideological things. This is a very human dynamic. All these different groups fighting for the same thing. Can they even get out of their own way to unite? And that's what we see a lot with the X-Men. And the idea of the school itself, it becomes a cult of the cause, right? The X-Men operate more like a belief system. The school for gifted youngsters isn't just a sanctuary. It's almost a religious order disguised as this academic institution. They have a doctrine, right? Mutant equality and coexistence. They have their defined saints and martyrs. Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, Storm. These are figures who really embody that self-sacrifice. They give everything for the mutant cause. Then they've got this conflict in their own internal dogma, either peacefully coexist or those repping mutant supremacy. So in this sense, the X-Men are a faith community built around identity rather than a creed. And that's what makes it psychologically so volatile. It could go either way. And justified for them, either way that you go would kind of be justified, right? And the power of diversity and the psychology of difference. Now, the group psychology tells us that diverse teams like this, they're innovative, but they're unstable. The X-Men's diversity of powers really mirrors the diversity of human experience. They do a good job handling race, gender, class, and abilities. But their frequent infighting reflects that in-group fraction, that the struggle to reconcile these differences together under a shared purpose. We've seen Storm and Cyclops go at it over leadership. Wolverine versus Scott and the Professor in terms of control. Rogue against herself, and all these various parts that have different collective trauma, different things that are kind of driving it. And so it's always this internal war of ideology and identity. And it's the paradox of inclusion. Diversity is their greatest strength, but it's their constant source of existential crisis. And on a mythic level, these guys represent the children of Prometheus. These are the outcasts bringing light to humanity, right? Very Promethean, but being punished for their differences. And this revolves around moral injury. It's being hated that they're hated for the thing that makes them divine, which is kind of a weird thing. So the X-Men also operate with a true shadow, which is the rest of mutant kind, or other parts of mutant kind, specifically the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. They're not just their opposite, they're the acknowledgement that maybe the X-Men aren't right. Maybe ignoring all the rage, the vengeance, and the superiority is the wrong route to go. So they constantly have a mirror to look at. But the real thing I pull out of this is that their strength, again, is through that diversity. But the thing that tears them apart is that very same diversity. And that reflects, I think, what we see in the real world with a lot of marginalized groups trying to come together. And that's ultimately what we get with the X-Men. That's the psychology of them. They're trying to work through it. They know they have a bigger thing that's going to obliterate them all, but they can't pull this thing together. They never really form a good team.